Ousky.
Hello, Olivia.
So good to be here. So happy that you accepted to have this tea o'clock, 5 o'clock tea time with me. I'm having coffee. What are you having?
I'm having coffee. So yes, I have coffee during tea time. It's good.
Yeah, because for those who doesn't know, you and me, we have this tradition, right? It's already a tradition of every forum we have a breakfast together one day, and we are keeping our tradition even in the virtual forum.
Yes, so, even on Sunday morning, we always have it Sunday morning, and we're having this on Sunday morning. It's perfect.
Sunday morning, having coffee with Ron Ousky. I am a lucky person. Oh my God, I keep pitching myself.
Oh.
So how are you? How are you doing? How is everything in this 2020 for you?
It's been really good. I mean, unusual, and there's some things we missed, to be sure, and we're trying, like everybody, to make up for it by doing other things. That's why I appreciate doing this, and trying to reach out in other ways to make up for things we can't do. I'm probably like you. I'm a face-to-face people person, so nothing will quite replace a face-to-face conversation or a hug or a handshake, but we're getting close, and we're getting more creative, and we're realizing there are some things that we are doing now, both socially and in our professions, that we will do after the pandemic. So clearly good things will come from this, but that doesn't mean I'm hoping it'll be any longer. The sooner it is done, the better.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I forgot to say in the beginning, because I was so emotional here being with you, that you are a lawyer and mediator in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah, it is right. Correct.
And you are also a father and a grandfather, right?
Yes. I have 3 children and 2 grandchildren, and 1 grandchild on the way in December. And last night at the social thing, I had my little granddaughter on my lap because she was visiting us. And I mean, it is such a joy. And those of you who are younger people who are experiencing it as a parent, just hold on to the joy that you'll get to, for many of us, go through it all again in a even just as wonderful way, which has really been fun. So.
That's right. So you're being able to see them, to get in touch with your kids during the pandemic. How was that for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had our kids, at least 2 of the 3 live near us, so they're part of our, we call pod, our quarantine group. So we kind of quarantine together. So we're lucky to be able to provide, be able to see the kids, and we even provided childcare for the grandchildren for a while. And so without that, I think we would have a much tougher time. I know a number of people who can't see their children and grandchildren, and my heart aches for them, because that has sustained us, because a Zoom conversation with your grandchild isn't quite the same as having her on your lap. So.
Yeah, that's right. And that's also make me think about families that get divorced and have some situations that, a parent needs to have a relationship with the child through social media or Zoom meetings. Is not the same, right? It is.
Absolutely.
It's really not the same.
And I think even for those families, the pandemic has increased our Zoom skills, so they're doing that better, but it's still not a substitute. And for people, especially people that are long distance away, the ability to do this by Zoom or FaceTime or some app is certainly so much better than it would have had 20 years ago, but it's not the same as seeing people in person, to be sure.
That's right. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about your personal life, your story. I want to show people and remember that we met in a forum 2012 in Chicago, and you gave me that book, your book, the book you wrote with Stu.
Yes.
And we here in Brazil, the Brazilian Institute, we translated into Portuguese. So this is so nice. And you were so, one thing that you tell, when I think about Ron Ousky, I think generosity and big hugs. And you gave me the book and the CD with the film. And you told me to put subtitles in Portuguese. And you know that we used that video about the book, the video made with Stu, to start to giving our first talks about what collaborative practice is. So me and Tanya, we did put subtitles in Portuguese, so we could start to talk about that.
Oh,
You are like so generous, and that was like a turning point. That was because
oh,
of you. Yes, really.
that is so kind. And I'm just thrilled to know that people in Brazil are being able to use this and so many other great resources. And that is part of that, as you've seen, the collaborative community. Everybody shares with everybody else. That's how we've grown. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And tell me, why did you decided to study law? Do you come from a family of lawyers, or you were the first one in your family?
No, I was the first in my family. I came from a family in a rural area who worked with their hands, farmers, and my dad was a hardware store owner, and people had made a living the hard way with their hands. But I was not. I sort of joke. I was not very good with my hands. If I had to make a living with my hands, I would have starved long ago. So I knew quite early on that I was going to have to make a living with my mind in some way, and so I knew that college would be something. And I was pretty the first in my family generation to go to college and then to law school, but it was just something that was in me more, and I just knew where my talents lie, where it's something related to school, and initially wanted to be a journalist because my brother was a journalist, and I liked the idea of observing and reporting, which is kind of partly what I try to do in collaborative is observe and report. But when journalism didn't seem like a good fit, I thought of law school for all the wrong reasons in some ways. I was somebody who always argued, and I was, from the time I was 8 years old, people would say, "You argue all the time, you should be a lawyer," and they would joke. I thought, well, I do argue all the time, so maybe I should be a lawyer. Never would I have imagined that I became the kind of lawyer who tries to convince people how useless arguing is. And so while argument drew me to law school, realized maybe it's those who argue well that understand best how useless it can be. Particularly when you're dealing with someone like your spouse. I mean, I think an argument when you're dealing with a judge or someone who hasn't made up his or her mind, it has some value. But when you're dealing with a spouse or somebody who already has an opinion about something, arguments just drive them deeper into what they already previously believed. And the part of the art of collaborative over time was the understanding different ways to help people relate to us rather than using argument or understand us. So I was always more interested in families than I was dollars and numbers and things. And so I got attracted to family law in law school just because that just seemed more interesting to me. So by the time I did a lot of family law clinic in law school, and I've done family law my whole life because it just seemed like, and I, like so many collaborative attorneys, I think if I weren't a lawyer, I would likely be working in social services of some kind, psychology, social work, because that's the social services, the psychology, the way we behave is interesting to me. And collaborative law was a way to combine law with how we relate to each other. So
Perfect. And how did you heard about collaborative law? How did you start it? How was that shift for you?
yeah, well, it was interesting because I in some ways, I mean, people know that I've been doing collaborative law for a long time, so they sort of think of somebody as somebody who got it right away, and that's simply not true. I struggled with the concept the way a lot of people do. I mean, my first 10 or 15 years of law practice, I did it same old way everybody does. I litigated the traditional, and I did get to know Stu Webb, and Stu and I had 2 or 3 cases together. I really liked Stu. He was a great guy. And when Stu came along with this idea of collaborative law, I was interested because, like most lawyers, I was realizing that family law wasn't turning out the way that I thought it would. I thought I would be helping families, and I realized I was not. I felt like a bull in a china shop. You would go in and help families and do as much damage as you were doing good. And I knew there had to be something different. I got trained as a mediator, and I liked that, but I never really became a full-time mediator, and I felt like there needed to be something more than just what mediation was bringing. And when Stu came along with his idea of collaborative law, and I went to his very first kind of collaborative training, and I learned about it, and I liked it, but like so many people, I had 2 big misunderstandings about it. I mean, 2 big ones that I had for years. One was, well, it's really nice that he wants us to be nice to each other, but this idea of the withdrawal agreement or the collaborative commitment, that's not really so important. Stu got that part wrong. I thought he's right about let's be nice to each other. He's wrong about this withdrawal agreement. So I didn't push that part of it very, very hard. And when I did talk to clients about it, they weren't very impressed with the idea of withdrawing because they got anxious about it because they knew I was anxious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had no success early on. And I also, the second mistake I made before I really got involved in collaborative was that I, like a lot of people, I thought, well, what's the big deal? We're settling all our cases anyhow. And, I was settling more and more cases. So big deal. So you settle cases. And I didn't really get early on that we were really looking for a deeper resolution, a different kind of settlement, a kind of settlement I hadn't even begun to think about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a few years of dabbling in it. And then finally, as we started to notice that collaborative was growing around the world, that in California and Vancouver, and then Stu started to explain to us that it was becoming interdisciplinary, that some people in other parts of the world were adding other elements to it, team members. And we thought that was fascinating. And Stu brought a training to Minnesota about 10 years after he started collaborative. And well, I was very fascinated by that. I was on the board. And so we went to this training, and all the, the great people, we had Pauline Tesler and Nancy Ross and some other really talented people that came to Minnesota for expenses only. I mean, that back then they doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Mm-hmm. And that training on interdisciplinary, a light bulb went off in my mind because, first of all, they helped me understand how important the withdrawal agreement was in shifting the whole paradigm shift, which Stu had been explaining for 10 years, but I'm a slow learner. Then secondly, it helped me understand that by having other disciplines, other people involved, we could really seek a deeper resolution and do something that I had never seen in any of my cases. And so from that point forward, I became really infected by it, and I really got it. That was sort of my shift. And almost shortly after that, I started doing collaborative almost exclusively, and pretty much have done that since. But it was a gradual shift. So all the misunderstandings that many people struggle with, I had as well. And so when I train people and go out these things, I know they're excited, but I know many of them are gonna have the same struggles I had. They're gonna think, why the withdrawal agreement? What's the big deal about settling? Why all these team members? All the things that I wondered about, they're wondering about. So it's helped me. Sometimes the people who learn slowest, at least when you learn it, you understand what people's doubts might be. So anyhow, so that was kind of
that's great. And then well, you decided to write the book with Stu. What
yes.
was this?
2005 and 2006, I think was when 2006 and first time it came out in hardcover.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Yeah. So as I got, in the early 2000s, started doing collaborative more, doing it exclusively. And there were wonderful books that were coming out for professionals. I mean, Pauline had her wonderful book, and Nancy and Vicky, really great books. And we thought, well, there isn't a book yet written for the clients. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a book written primarily for clients to understand this? And so we thought, let's start working on that. And we just started working on it, hoping we would someday get somebody to publish it. And out of nowhere, we got contacted by a really good publisher, Penguin Publishing, one of the largest publishers in the world, reached out to us and said, gee, would you be interested in doing a collaborative book? And we thought, wow, that's like a gift from heaven. And we said, would we? We're starting on this. And so to be able to write it with Stu was one of the great joys of my life, because he's been my mentor through collaborative and my mentor through life for 30 years now. And spending time with him on the book was a great opportunity to really get an understanding of how Stu saw collaborative. So we're actually, the book has been around for 14 years, and we're actually talking about doing an update. And I'm going to work with Randy Heller on doing a more interdisciplinary aspect and with Stu, because it's been a while, because there are a lot of things that have happened in the 14 years since we wrote the book. But I'm glad that it's still, I think, in terms of explaining the core things, it still has a lot of usefulness. And writing it taught me, I mean, as you were writing it, you go deeper in thinking about it. And it really helped me learn, not just from Stu, but even just by learning, by thinking about the process as a client looks at it. So
that's so true. I agree with you. I think I'm having trouble writing me now. I don't know if it's a pandemic, but it wasn't to me, it was never really easy to sit down and write. I have but it's such an important exercise that we need to do, because when we write a text or an article or a book, or when we get ready to teach, to give classes, is a way that you put the information in, you organize that, and then you put it out. So it's a way to get appropriated of the knowledge. I think it's necessary to do that. So that's what we're trying to do. That's why we decided to translate the books, because we also think it's very important to spread the idea in a deeper way. If we have the books, it's
Yes.
concrete that people can come back and read, and that's really, it's really materials. Like we're missing hugs. It's the same thing. We can spread ideas in the wind, and we can put them in how do I say that, incarnation. It's like,
yes,
right? It's
oh, absolutely. And there are so many good things being written all the time from people all over the world, and people like you and I are contributing their voices to this. And I'm so glad to see that. And I, as someone who thinks a lot about writing and does some writing, but doesn't see myself as a great writer, I have only one tip for people, and that's really just authentic voice is everything. I think early on, I was timid about writing. I thought I had to write. We have so many good writers in this community with like Pauline Tesler and Nancy Cameron, and I think, boy, when I try to write like them, I'm a lousy writer, but I can write Ron Ousky, and I can write Ron Ousky as well as anybody, and you can write Olivia as well as anybody. And I think that's sort of the lesson, is that everybody's got a voice and a thing, that in a way they can describe it. And if you can describe something in your authentic voice, then you may have added something that somebody else didn't think about. And that's really been the big thing for me, whether you're writing or speaking or training. We have so many people that can just bring their authentic voice and give us a new idea that we never thought about before.
That's true. That's true. Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful to hear that.
Yes.
But you told that you, coming back to your story, to your trajectory, you said you were slow learn, took you 10 years to get really into that, and then you started and you wrote the book. And nowadays, tell us about the Collaborative Alliance.
As we started to do interdisciplinary practice, as we started to have mental health professionals and financial people on board in Minnesota, it became clear that it was great to do, but it was very difficult for people to have to go all over the city to find their professionals. And in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, we are really spread out. I mean, that we have, sometimes the professionals can be an hour or more apart from each other. And it became sometimes a challenge to get everybody together. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have a space in which most of our professionals would share that space, either as a conference room or as our full-time space. And so we had several years where we thought about doing that. And finally, we got a group together to really give it a try. And I don't know, again, around that same time, about 2005, when the book came out. And we had a number of people, but Amy Wolf, who's a tremendous financial neutral, who was, probably done more financial cases than anybody around, agreed to be my partner in this. And she and I opened up a space in Minnesota, which was initially about 7,000 square feet and a handful of offices, mostly collaborative professionals, some other things. And we shared conference rooms and ideas, and we wanted to make it a collaborative center, both for primarily for our clients, so they could have one place to go where they could get many of the professionals right there, but also for ourselves, so we could share ideas and walk across the hall and see a child specialist or a financial neutral. And it worked. I'm a big dreamer, and usually I think if a dream happens half as much as I hope it's going to be, it's good. This one actually exceeded my dream. It grew faster than I would have imagined. We're really up to about 23,000 square feet now, and not all of it's collaborative, but it kept growing and other things. And now with COVID, some of the office spaces backed off a little bit, but it really has become a wonderful thing. We have many wonderful professionals in the space, and many wonderful professionals all over the community who share in the space. And most of my cases, I was able to just go across the hall and work with my team members. So it's been, and it really helped grow collaborative, I think, in our community, and certainly helped my practice and helped me feel, helped us share ideas as well. So, and I've been happy to see so many other collaborative centers have grown up around the world, the one in California and in Massachusetts, and heard Kevin Scudder yesterday talking about in Seattle. And I know, and there's some of them are very large spaces, some are very small, but what I really want to impart to people, even if you have 2 or 3 rooms and you use it as just a gathering center for people, because even if the professionals have to travel there, if the clients can think, okay, I don't have to think about 4 different offices, I can just come to this one space and the professionals will meet me there. That's good. Now, interestingly, in COVID, we could practice with teams all over the world, and it would but back when we get back to using offices, having it as convenient as possible for the clients is really a nice thing.
Yeah, that's a dream. That's a dream I had here, is to have a collaborative center. And now I moved my office and I'm sharing space with the mental health professional,
fantastic.
Monica. We are sharing space. We have 3 rooms, 3 different rooms, and the reception. And so we are sharing, and now our neutral financial is coming to share with us. So we are
fantastic.
having our little
For you.
collaborative center. Yeah.
Well, when Olivia Fürst says she has a dream, people should pay attention because you are a good dreamer and a realizer. I mean, you in 2012 you were saying how you dreamed about spreading collaborative in Brazil, and there were at that time 3 or 4 people, and I thought, well, a wonderful, delightful woman, but she has no idea what she's up to again. So here we are, 8 years later, and you look at how Brazil is such an amazing place through the help of so many good leaders. But dreams come true, and that's right. I hope you hang on to that.
That's right. Yeah. I think we are the same kind of person in that point.
Yes, absolutely.
You're a big dreamer, so.
Yeah, one of my biggest influences in life was my mother, and her saying that she gave me was from her father, and it was an old saying, and I don't know if how well it translates, but if you don't build castles in the air, you'll never build them anywhere. And I've always hung on to that, because some of the castles in the air go nothing, but if you don't start with that, where will you go? And so and we are the same person that way.
That's right. You wrote in your book to her. You wrote that.
Oh, I did. That's right. I'm glad I forgot.
Yeah.
Yes. That was big. We all have our influences.
Yes, you said that. Beautiful. I love it. I love that image. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Learning. I'm taking it too, to me.
Well, keep building those castles. And again, some of them don't turn into anything, but some of them turn into something really special. And sometimes it turns out to be something a little different than what you imagined, and the different thing is even greater. I mean, so it's infectious to be in a community of other people like that. We feed off of each other. Dreamers need to be around other dreamers, because that's how good ideas flourish. So,
yeah.
That's good.
But tell me we're talking about the office and the pandemic. You started saying about the good things. We're missing the presential, the hugs, the touching. So tell me, what do you think is next, Ron?
Yeah, well,
to our profession and to our society, where your thoughts are going in your field?
Well, yeah. No, I mean, thank you. That's something I spent a lot of time thinking about. And again, I mean, first, when there's pandemic related things, let's start with that I do think when this is over, there are some skills we'll have developed through the pandemic that will help clients for years and years to come. Because while we hope that we will get together for in-person meetings for our main meetings, I think a lot of our professional meetings and our client meetings and doing things online, right now, even when I do my client pre-brief or debrief or talk to my clients, I used to always do it either the phone call or bring them into the office. And now I find a Zoom, I mean, I almost never do phone calls anymore. Why do a phone call when I can face-to-face with somebody? And at times where, they would have, for them to travel 45 minutes to a meeting with 15 minutes or 20 minutes in my office, it's a more benefit for them to do Zoom. So I'm sure for some meetings, I'll be using Zoom long after this. And I think it's also, I mean, the second element that Zoom has helped us, or the pandemic, is that to be more flexible in how we can bring the various team members to the process without excess expense, because we all believe in teaming as much as we can, and yet for many clients, they cannot afford that. And so It's a matter of bringing to the table who they need when they need it. And the more flexible we can be, the more we can be cost effective. And I think Zoom gives us an opportunity to do that. We can bring in, we can have the coach or child specialist meet with the clients, and then maybe the attorneys come in for the last 15 minutes. We can have the attorneys involved, and maybe the financial comes in later. I mean, we can mix and match in a way that's really client-centered, in a way that's, I think, kind of exciting. And I hope it allows us to get more creative with how we can keep this cost-effective for clients, which is our big challenge. There's a lot of talk of diversity and reaching a lot of population, but we have to realize that some populations have fewer resources than others, and we need to be able to be cost-effective. And this will be a tool to help us do this. I also, and I'm excited to start doing this, I want to team up with people in other parts of the country. There are coaches and child specialists and financial people that we could bring in on our team while we're doing the COVID thing, that I would love to learn how they do things. And I think the idea of doing international cases or national cases is exciting. I did actually do one prior to COVID, one international collaborative case with Marilia in Sao Paulo, where we were using Zoom then, but we were able to do an international collaborative case, which was really fun. And but I think the opportunities to do those kind of things within our countries and around the world is are becoming more skilled with Zoom will enhance that. And I mean, it was always there even before the pandemic, but now we learned how to use it. So those are the things that I think where we're going with Zoom. But one of the other things that I think where we are going with collaborative in general is become one of my favorite topics, because I'm kind of one of the old timers, to be sure, and an insider, but I like to think of myself as an outsider, always trying to break the mold, because I've been kind of a troublemaker that way, because I'm always thinking, well, yes, we've done this, and what can we do differently? What's the future look like? Because I'm doing a workshop with Megan, my paralegal. She was a paralegal for 10 years and now is a collaborative attorney for 2 years. And she, as a younger person and more new to this, is a good reminder to the fact that collaborative was designed for a particular generation, predominantly baby boomers and people who had thought things a certain way. And many of them are still our clients, but we are now new worlds, new countries, and new generations, millennials, and people that have different ideas about how to do things. And we need to reshape and evolve, and we need to take the best of all the ideas out there. And that was the other piece of this, is that collaborative has sometimes grown up in a silo as a separate idea when it really needs to be understood as a blended idea. Collaborative and mediation can be blended. I see there's some workshops on that at this forum, which is tremendous, on bundling, self-representation, interdisciplinary. There are a lot of trends of the last 40 years that create opportunities for us if we can think creatively about how to blend our process with other things, rather than just defending collaborative and say, well, we're better than you. We ought to think, well, no, we are a thing that we do, and we do it well. Let's talk about what you do well and use it with what we do well. And I think the idea of blending our process, I think the next great growth in collaborative will come when we figure out, A, how to appeal to the next generation, and B, how to blend collaborative with the other good things that have come along. So.
Nice, interesting. I totally agree. I'm thinking a lot about what's next, and also I was going to ask you about that. I believe we are going to live in a hybrid situation, mixing.
In a what situation?
Hybrid, combined.
Hybrid. Oh, yes. No, you said it right.
Combining presential with virtual. I think we are going to bring out the best of each. That's what I believe. And for collaboration, I agree with you that the ways mixing and developing and trying to blend and to adapt to other situations, I totally agree. One thing I was thinking, and I would like to ask you, is that I would like to ask you, do you think to the clients to be on Zoom are they reacting to the meetings on Zoom? Do you think they feel more comfortable to be online instead of being in the office? Because there are some things with the thinking we cannot see their body reactions, their body communication, and we cannot give support like in a more warm way. But
Yeah.
but in a way, I believe that we are more in a safer place because they can recover for an emotion in their homes. So we can see good and bad things in both situations. How do you see that? What do you think?
Well, exactly what you said. I've seen both positives and negatives. There are positive things they say, but especially if they're in separate homes. There are times where I have sensed that certain clients feel safer to speak up and be more comfortable, or sitting in their living room, maybe talking with more ease than they might in our office. And I find even the professionals, I'm sometimes more comfortable and listening better because I'm sitting sometimes in my basement or someplace where I can be a little less lawyer-like because I'm not in an office setting. So there are definitely some positive ways that we're connecting that I didn't notice before. However, on the other hand, there are sometimes, and again, some of our clients are still in the same house, and sometimes they're working on one computer, and sometimes they're sitting side by side with a laptop, and sometimes there's tension. And here I am trying to support my client, and he or she is sitting next to a person they're tense about, and I from those things, I find that regrettable. Or sometimes they're worried about, the children are in the next room or what. I mean, so there's a difference Zooming when the clients are in different homes than when they're in the same home.
That's right.
Other times I've seen clients side by side in the same home, joking with each other and being wonderful. But it's a dynamic to watch for, because if they're sitting side by side in the house together and we have a difficult conversation and then we click the Zoom off and suddenly they're sitting in a house together, I worry about that. Not just in terms of course, domestic violence, which of course we need to worry about, but even just the discomfort of power imbalances. So yeah, we just have to watch for, it's not just a matter of does Zoom work or doesn't it? It's sort of when does it work best and when does it work less effectively?
Yeah, that's what I believe too. And one thing that I think is also positive is that sometimes when a client is moving the leg or make like that, trying to express, to communicate something, that won't work so well in a Zoom. So people are being forced of bringing up their questions, their necessities, their requests in words. So we are being pushed to have a more authentic and careful communication. Maybe that's something that Zoom might put us.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation too. And they say 90% of communication is nonverbal, and we are having to pick up nonverbal cues, and they're still out there on Zoom. They're a little less present. But I was interested. I was talking to a mediator who does all this stuff by Zoom now, and he was saying that there was a study. I haven't read the study, that I think is accurate. That it says, and some of us are finding ourselves kind of exhausted at the end of a Zoom day because your brain, we don't realize our brain is working much, much harder to pick up the social cues on a video than we are in person. And so it's possible to do it, but it really is a brain stretch. And so we sometimes, what I'm finding myself is to not build so many Zoom meetings back to back, because it's so easy. I can click from this meeting and I can suddenly be talking to my client, and then there's no buffer, where even walking down the hall to get a cup of coffee is a buffer, where we can really get exhausted by just clicking around all these things. So there's a lot of things to learn from how as we do this.
That's true. That's true. We don't drive to the office and then drive back, listen to a music. You just Zoom to another. I
think we need to start building in some buffers, even if we are driving, to kind of say, okay, I'm not going to build back-to-back Zoom meetings just because I can. I'm going to find a way to take a break and get up and take a walk in between my Zoom meetings or something. But I think that's the other challenge, because we may be doing Zoom for quite a few months yet, from what I can tell. So we need to get good at it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we're almost finishing our time here, but tell me about the forum. How do you like the virtual version of the forum?
Well, it's been interesting. We're in the early part of it yet, and I've been so impressed by watching and hearing from the board members talk about how much preparation has gone into this. As soon as I heard that we were going to do this virtually, I was so disappointed, because I've been to every single forum, and I look at it as just both professionally and personally an event where I connect with good friends. And I thought, I'm not going to see face-to-face my good friends and this is going to be the same. And I know the board and the staff has worked so hard to replicate this as much as possible. And it's early, and I've been to one for Pre-Farming Institute. I had a peacemaker gathering, and I went to the plenary, and I went to the social things. So I've only had 4 things so far, and I've gone to the exhibit hall. So it's early to see, but what I can tell, it's the same thing we said about Zoom before. There's something lost and something gained. I mean, clearly, when I'm sitting at some of these, I'm like, oh, I wish we could be together. And I think some things that we're trying are working better than others. Some things, I mean, the last night's dance was as good as you're going to make it, but it isn't the same energy. But that's as well as we can do. And maybe if we did 100 of them, we'd get closer and closer. But it was a great effort, but it's not the same, and nobody would pretend that it is. On the other hand, and I think you were at the Peacemaker workshop, weren't you? And that was, I've been to those special gatherings forever, and Peacemaker ones. That was one of the best events I've ever been to, and I hope we do it because they did a breakouts and putting us in small groups, and there was more content in that hour and a half than I've seen in almost any session I've been at, and it was valuable for 2 reasons. One, we segmented the time and really focused on some things, and it was a wonderful event. And also, what I liked was that they kind of put us in rooms randomly with people, because we sometimes at the forum wind up sitting at the table with the people we know, and sometimes we're lucky enough to get at a table with people we don't know by mistake, by randomly, and that's sometimes the most fun. And I liked that I was put with a group that I had, some of them I was with 6 other people, and some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. Yeah. And I like avoiding the awkwardness of who am I going to sit with, and just put me somewhere. And I like, and that's the beauty of the collaborative movement is you can sit with almost anybody and really find an adventure. And so I hope that even after the pandemic, we will do some elements of what went on at that training, that Peacemaker training. So I think we're going to find that throughout. And the Pre-Conference Institute went to, it seemed to go really well. So I look at the same way I do my cases. I think with my cases online, I'm doing about 80% to 90% of what I could have done before. And that's just pretty good, but it's not 100%. And I think with the forum, that's the best we can hope for. Let's try to get 80% of what we had and try to add some things. I was thrilled to see that 600 people are there, and that we could reach the people all through the world, people that I know. I'm always so impressed by the people that come from Brazil and Italy and all over the world, and the time and expense it takes, and I'm grateful that you do it. But now to open this up so that people who couldn't always afford to fly here and spend every day can now be a part of this community. And so I think we're reaching people we never reached, which is tremendous. So there's definitely some positives. So
that's right. And I hope that for next forums, one dream is that we can mix that. And if it's possible to share at least part of the content and the workshops in the virtual and presential, because people that can't afford flying or people who have the language barrier will be able, because we could do simultaneous translation. Did you know that? We have simultaneous translation to Portuguese and Italian. So anyone can participate. This is
I love that. And for a workshop I'm doing on Tuesday, it has both Portuguese and Italian. I'm so thrilled. And I think you're right that it is. I hope that at the future forums we do that, because it will allow people in other countries to log in. And I think it'll, with the numbers, because I mean, if we do a presentation and there are 3 people from Brazil and 2 from Italy, you might think, well, can we afford an expense of a translator? But if we have a translator and we can reach out to people in the countries, and we have 10 or 15 or 20 people, then it's easy to justify having translators. So I think as we become a true international movement with more non-English speaking people, the ability to translate and have worldwide forums with translation has really been opened up, which is tremendous.
Tremendous. I got goosebumps here. I think that's beautiful. That's going to be beautiful. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be in the board, to be part of that, because Ron, to me, IACP is home, and you, Ron, you and so many other people, but you are special, very special. You're family to me. So it is like when we meet. I remember one day I went to the forum and I met Stu, and we just we stayed hugging like for about a minute or more. The feeling I had, we were like forever and just laughing. We didn't say anything.
Oh,
Just hugging and laughing. You know, that was like, so that's something
oh.
you feel,
Well,
or you
and,
have.
and it's interesting because one of the things that I find interesting about the movement is that you've talked wonderfully about meeting Stu and me and Pauline and people you met and how the imprint is on your mind. And I hope it's occurred to you and realized that the imprint was just as deep on our minds. I guarantee you that Stu and Pauline and I remember as vividly that first meeting as you. So it isn't just the new person meeting the older people. I mean, the people, and you are now that you are somebody that's been doing this for 8 years, you are probably starting to have those experiences where you see somebody new who comes up to you and say, oh, this is Olivia, this person who's done all these things. And you have a special connection that that person will remember, but you remember it just as much. And so the gift runs both ways, and that's the beauty of this process. So
Yes, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Oh, Ron, I could be here forever. I don't want to. I know you probably have to go, but this is wonderful. It's wonderful to have this conversation with you, to hear if there's anything else you would like to tell to Brazilians and to anyone in the world.
Well, I mostly want to thank you. What a wonderful idea. And I hope people who happen to see these videos will pick up on this idea of just having conversations and sharing them. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of and a wonderful thing to share. So that's my first thought. And then the only other thing, I guess, because because we're talking about Brazilians and with one of my wonderful friends from Brazil, I just have to just comment on how much love and excitement there is in Brazil. And I'm just so excited to keep hearing from people from Brazil, and the time we spent in Brazil with Stu and I what was one of the something I will cherish all my life, because there's so much energy and love there, and it is and it's been exciting to watch that continue to flourish. And at the same time, I realize everywhere in the world that grows, even in places with high energy like Brazil, there are mountains to climb, there are obstacles. There are people that are going to be saying, boy, I've been putting my heart and soul in this for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Why don't I have more cases? Why isn't it going deeper? Why isn't this happening? Please be patient with that. It's a place we have all been, and to continue to think creatively, because making that connection between that passion that's in your heart and then that very practical issue of having the kind of cases and the practice that you want takes time, and it takes a lot of patience and perseverance, and it is worth every second of it. But if you are one of these people that are at that stage thinking, boy, I've been doing this and it hasn't quite turned into everything I wanted it to be, I bless you for going this far, but be patient and be creative, because the next great thing is just around the corner. So
I forgot to ask you something that I like to ask to people I invite here. If we were in presence, if I were in Minneapolis, where would we have this coffee? Where would you like? I want to imagine. Can you?
Oh, fun! I like. Well, it's funny because it is because we got snow, and normally we have October days that are beautiful. And if it would have been a nice October day, I would have. There's a wonderful restaurant on the side of a lake where I would have sat had it been one of those fall days. As it is, there are 6 inches of snow on the ground, and so we would not be having coffee there, but we would be having coffee at a restaurant where there's a really side table. And I purposely sat by a fireplace, but something that felt warm and cozy and distant. And there are restaurants like that where we could sit in private and have a warm, and I love the idea of coffee and breakfast. And so there are restaurants like that. So imagine a cozy restaurant with a fireplace setting, distant from people, and be able to have a nice cozy conversation. But what a great question. I love it's fun to think of that. So
I'm imagining, and soon I'll be able to be there with you and have this coffee in that place.
Yes, so I hope so. We need to get you back to Minneapolis in a nice warm October day.
Yeah, and I think we need to set up another conversation just to talk about that FETSER Institute meeting. You invited me to get part of it, but I think we need to have a whole 40 minutes to talk about that.
Yeah, that whole I love revisiting that whole what's love got to do with it conference. I mean, I laugh every time I think about having this great love conference with 50 wonderful people all over the world, and it was one of the places where I got to know you better. And I would love to do something like that again, because it was an intimacy about that and a sharing of ideas about that that will stay with me forever. So I would love to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, that's
And how
right.
to do another one. Maybe we'll do another one of some sort.
I hope to me was a turning point. It was,
Yeah. Oh, that
and
was
I
great.
had the feeling that I couldn't absorb everything because I was such a beginner in that. So, but I did absorb what it was possible by that time. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that in another.
Yeah, I would love to continue that conversation by all means. So
Okay. That's right.
anyhow, but thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you. I have no words to describe. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very
Thank you.
much,
It's so
Don.
great.